Hello and welcome to another episode of the 2 Minutes Podcast. My name is Imran Lasker. I'm a consultant radiologist.
And hi, I'm Dushigan Wardner. I'm a cardiology registrar, subspecializing in intervention.
So, Thrusha, how you been? How's your running going?
It's going all right. I'm still in my running gear because I did a run this evening. It was intervals today, which is, I don't enjoy any of it, but I enjoy this the least. Because at least when I'm running, so the long distance ones, I'm sorry, you asked the question, I'm going to give you the answer to the fullest.
No,
of
you
my
tell
ability.
me. I ask because I care. Go for it.
So the long runs where you just pretty much coast, I just run probably at a pace that's, it's just about the same speed as walking quickly. But I'm happy with that. I could do that and listen to an audiobook or whatever. Intervals, though, take some thought because I have to actually try and run fast. And you run fast and slow and run fast and slow. And I wasn't feeling it. I'm not feeling it. But apparently they say...
you turned up.
I turned up, exactly, right?
Yes.
And they say, so of your training program, if you do 90% of your runs, then you're doing pretty well. And I'm pretty much there. I think there's 7 weeks left now before the marathon, and I've missed two kind of easy runs, which are basically short runs that I've missed. But otherwise, I've kept all the long runs and all of the kind of irritating interval or tempo runs where you have to run a bit faster. I've kept all those going. So,
Okay, here's a silly question. So look, so for someone like me who doesn't do anything like this,
right.
you sign up to the marathon. Do they say, okay, so if you sign up to the marathon, this is our suggested training program that you should follow? Or do you have something, you've got that app which is like Couch to 10K where it will show you exactly how to go from doing nothing to being able to run 10K. How does this work?
Yeah, so you can access training plans and stuff, I think, through the London Marathon thing. So when you apply, you also give them an indication of how quickly you want to do it. And that also, that will affect where you start from, because then they try and put, I think, similar speed people together so that people aren't crashing into one another and that kind of thing. And there are loads, mate. There's loads of training plans basically based upon your experience beforehand, but also what kind of time you're aiming for, that kind of thing. So I basically I looked up a plan that kind of fit in with the best with my rota. So there was that. And then I was also looking to try and sign up for races, along as I found that, I thought maybe I'm less likely to skip races, but in the end, I never ended up signing up to any of them. So that wasn't that helpful. And I wanted a plan where I'd only be running 3 times a week, one long one in the weekends and then 2 runs during the week. And so this is what I'm doing.
But is that someone that you can go to be like, okay, I want you to train me to get to this? Or is it
absolutely.
always going to be self? Okay.
Yeah. So I used to think when I ran before that just basically the more running you do, the better you get. And that works to an extent. But I think I found, or at least I was thinking in my head, proportionally, the more terrible I feel after running, the better it must be for me. I must feel terrible, and therefore that's weakness leaving your body or whatever, that whole kind of gym. It doesn't actually work like that, I think, in running. Some of my friends were saying you need to train smart. And there are runs that you do to prepare your joints, and there are runs that you do to make yourself go faster. And the ones that you do to make yourself go faster, those are the ones you try go hard at. But the other ones, you're just preparing your joints and stuff. So it's just a case of getting through it without getting injured. Because that was what would happen before. I'd train hard, get injured, and then I'd be limping or doing other kind of runs terribly because I'd be a bit sore and stuff. Whereas this time around, apart from having chest infections and stuff, which are purely from one cause, I've not actually injured myself yet. So that's nice.
Wow, man. I rate your motivation, mate. I really do.
Thanks.
I really do, honestly. Okay, so here's my motivation. There was someone's deleted a tweet, wasn't it, Thrusha? And we thought we didn't want to talk about it because I think it did open up. Is that can of worms or just it seems to be a common point of view? Yeah, Thrusha, you want to tell us about this one?
So basically, it was about a job advert for a teaching fellow job. I think it was called a fellow job. And I think the point of contention, at least from this post, was that it seemed to be offered to allied health professionals. I think primarily it was a nursing role, and they were going to be teaching medical students. And so when the tweet came out, it was from the perspective of, I would love a job like this, like F3. Why is it only advertised for nurses? But it's just been taken down. So it's a teaching fellow job. I don't think that's really I never ever really applied for that, but the idea of doing a teaching job and stuff would have been appealing for me, I think, back when around that time of foundation training, I guess. But what did you see the tweet? It's been deleted, right?
It's been deleted since, and fair enough, maybe they got a bit of a backlash over it. And I did see the tweet, and I think my initial feeling was that this person is looking at job adverts and just getting triggered as if they feel as though because of having a DR in front of their name, they should be able to walk into any job whatsoever. But then, actually, I was going to ask you what you think, because it's like I do wonder when you look at these jobs, what is it that's appealing to you so much about this particular job that you think that you want it? Is the actual teaching? Is that what you think is so awesome? Is it the pay that you think is particularly good? Is the hours that you think that are particularly good? Because I think if you yourself can identify what of those few things that are is it in that job that you find is triggering you, making you feel unhappy, or making you think, oh, I wish my life was like that, then I've said this before, find something that will give you those things. Because I think in medicine, you will find something that will give you those things. There is something that will give you a 9 to 5 with a decent pay and come back home. And it does exist. You just got to be willing to find it if you know that's what makes you happy. But I'm just saying, walking around getting triggered by a job that's got nothing to do with you, I just find it very bizarre. How about you? Have I got the wrong end of the stick?
No, I think we know that. I think Zach did something along those lines, or at least that's something he's quite passionate about. And I think in theory, I quite like teaching. And the more I've been like reflecting about my career, like people say, oh, I want to go down this avenue and that avenue and whatever. And the more I think about it, the more I think to myself, I'd quite like to be a TPD.
Oh, okay. Yeah, go on. Yeah. Yeah.
Because I think that kind of appeals to stuff. No. The other thing that I quite like maybe would be to be involved in the medical school, in a medical school, to like deliver like teaching and stuff. Because I think for me, it's something that I found very difficult, and to be able to maybe help other people navigate it kind of speaks to like my ideals. But I think the reason why a person might it does tend to be like the cool people who do go for the teaching fellow jobs. Like I think because I think they won't be on calls and you're hanging out with students and whatever. And so I guess that seems cool. But I think you touched upon, so not having to do on calls and like more control over your life. I don't think the pay is necessarily going to be much better. But yeah, I think they seem like good reasons. And I think at a different time in my life, I think I probably would have been interested in the teaching fellow job.
Yeah, I see what you mean, but I just feel like you could still go for if you. I think it's very important to identify what it is that you think. So if you think teaching is what you'd like to do,
Yeah.
then fair enough. But I still think that you don't have to be a TPD. You don't have to be involved with the medical school or anything
Yeah.
like that to do those things. And I think when I first started, I mentioned this before, that I did become an educational supervisor, and I started getting a bit more involved with the training and stuff like that. And I actually just found it's really grating. Like you're trying to
Yeah.
change anything, trying to do anything, trying to make things better. It just became more of a challenge. And I think eventually I just gave it up. And I've only recently taken it back up because someone asked me to take it back up, and I did. And
Right.
it's actually been all right recently. But again, I think it's been better recently because I'm less of a newer consultant. And I guess I know my limitations as to what I can and can't do. Like I
Yeah.
won't be able to change some things. There's no point even going down that road. I've been there before. And but then at the same time, like I don't isn't what I want from it isn't entirely just teaching, right? Because I do teaching in other places like, through
Yeah.
lecturing and stuff. Because I do enjoy teaching. I do the videos and things that people may be aware of. And I'm not saying go look for my content out there, but it's there. And I think that you can do, if you really enjoy teaching, you can just do that without having to be involved in the things that you mentioned. And then you can cater your career towards what you want. So I've always said this before: if you do something busy, but you don't really want to be all that busy, then go find somewhere that's not busy, right? So if you want to leave at 5, but I think the sentiment I always find a bit strange is when I see medics get upset about other people going for jobs within the hospital realm, right? And like, I know there's a lot of people who say that, oh, we should have more medics in management, but then most of us don't want to do management. That's the issue, right? No, most of us didn't come into medicine to do management. If you want to be in management, then you'd go do a management qualification or something. But the vast majority of us became doctors because we want to be a doctor, and so I think it's a bit unrealistic to expect a huge proportion of medical people to go into medical management because it's just never really been like a thing. And I feel the same way about research, because going into medicine, no one ever says, oh, you got to do lots of research to be a good doctor. You got to do this, you got to do that, and it's thrown at you like, oh, now you got to do this, and it just seems a bit like, but why do we have to do this stuff? Like, what's making you think that I should be doing these things? Anyway, so coming back to something that you said is that I think I think if someone says I want to do teaching, the automatic idea is that if I want to do teaching, I've got to get involved with this, I've got to do involved with that stuff and that stuff. But actually, you could just be a consultant who's really interested in teaching and just teach for a couple of hours every single week if you wanted to, and have no official like thing at all, no grief, no emails, nothing. You could just do teaching and go. You see what I mean? So I'm just saying that you can do all of those things without the grief, and it doesn't always have to be those particular areas.
Yeah.
But when I see stuff like this, where people get really triggered by PAs, nurses, or any other healthcare professional coming into what they would call doctor stuff, right?
Yeah.
Whatever they think doctor stuff is, I do wonder whether that they're just going to be stuck in a perpetual state of just unhappiness.
That's what really what is it? Wasn't that
Yeah.
what it's about though? As you say, like it wasn't about the teaching fellow job, really, was it? It was like, as you say, just because they were upset that they were excluded from that conversation. A bit petty, isn't it? You can see why it's been deleted, I suppose.
Yeah, but I think this is going to be like if you're going to walk around feeling like you should be in every single party and you don't get invited to the ones that you're not meant to be invited to, you're just going to be perpetually upset about stuff. Like you're never going to just be happy. And actually, that kind of brings us on to Rosie's tweet, which is quite interesting about the determinants of professional fulfillment and burnout. Did you see?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is a tweet by Dr. Rosie Baru, ICU consultant. I feel like I was supposed to say something else there. She tweeted saying, newly published work on determinants of professional fulfillment in intensivists. Interestingly, the 45-year-old cohort were not fulfilled. Is this because we have more balanced work-home lives, more clinical experience, or something else? Well, that's interesting, isn't it? So basically, the older consultants were happier. Let me read the abstract. So this is a study, in case you guys are interested in. So it was looking at amongst intensivists, and it was a national survey, and it's performed by the Society of Critical Care Anesthesiologists in 2022. And it said increased burnout and decreased professional fulfillment amongst ITU physicians is partly due to the workload. And I think they're particularly interested in things following the pandemic. And they basically did a survey of 600 of their members and used various different fulfillment indexes to grade levels of professional fulfillment. And they said that it was, so it goes professional fulfillment and work exhaustion in this cross-sectional study were associated with several demographic and practice characteristics, but not COVID-19 related workload, suggesting that COVID-19 may have not had either a positive or negative perception of professional fulfillment. And as Rosie said in her kind of summary, that it tended to be better for the older consultants, and also multivariate. So factors associated with higher professional fulfillment included age over 45, if they were full-time more often, that's interesting, role as medical director, so perhaps that's to do with control of your career, and nighttime home call with supervision of in-house ICU fellows. That's interesting, isn't it? I wonder what that means.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, so if you're doing night, or maybe that meant...
Maybe they've got like a junior covering the nights rather than them having to cover the nights.
Yeah, sure.
So don't get as many phone calls and stuff.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what it means.
So Rosie's other conclusions are, and when I say more balanced work-home lives, if we have children, they're more likely to get themselves home, not need to wrap around care, keep themselves entertained on school holidays, etc. And there's no significant difference between the genders either.
It's interesting because you'd look back and think that essentially they're saying that the COVID workload and seeing whether that's made a difference in work fulfillment, but actually there's been no change in work fulfillment, and actually there are other factors that are contributing to work fulfillment, such as being over 45 and the other factors that you mentioned. That's what they're saying. Is 45 that old, by the way? I know you said older, but we're creeping up to 45.
Yeah, I know. There was like a guy who was solidarity on Twitter, and you're a balding cardiology reg in your 40s. I was like, oh no, I'm not actually there yet, but I guess I'm almost there. So
being more than 45 and having more of a balanced work-home life, the thing is, like, the idea that you have to, the implication here is that there's a certain age that you would need to get to before you can be fulfilled. But actually, I wonder, someone like myself anyway, I've said this before, if there's something that someone else has got that I want, I try and find out what they're doing and see how I can basically do the same thing, if not better. And so when you look at this information, you're saying that someone's a clinical director, so they're basically saying that someone who's exactly what you said, more in control of their career. And I think a lot of us don't feel like we're in control of our career. Maybe we should try and get control of our career. And I think part of the step towards it has been really good with the junior doctor strikes. Like, I really feel like, okay, we're finally taking a stand and saying, look, we want control over what we think we're worth being paid for, right? We're not going to settle anymore. Because before that, it just felt like you're just trundling along. No one's really doing anything, and we're just getting consistently get pay cut after pay cut, and nothing's really happening. But then also just having that idea, like, I feel like, I know it sounds like, now I do feel like I'm saying old, but the older I've got, I feel like you do look back and think about what is more important to you. Is doing this more important to you than being at home and watching TV? No, so I'm not doing it. But when I was training, I used to just give up everything and anything for work, right? If someone said you needed something done, or there was some research to do, or some audit to do, you throw everything at it to get it done. But now it's a bit like, especially near the end of my training, I think you told me recently, like, if you don't want to do a job, do a really bad job of it, and then they won't ask you to do it again.
Yeah, yeah,
So
it's
yes, I think
true.
that's pretty much what I was inadvertently employing. As like I just did such a terrible job that like it's never ever going to ask me to do any research or anything like that again. And then just yeah, those opportunities dried up, and I was very happy indeed. I was
Yeah, yeah,
very
fair
happy
enough.
indeed, man. But yeah, it's. I reckon it is worth looking at that cohort and trying to think about what are the things that we can bring into our own lives. But one of the challenging things I think for any junior doctor is something that Ollie Burton I saw probably been highlighted to other people, but I saw Ollie Burton mention this. So these graphs are horrifying. Do we have a duty to make applicants to medical school aware of this? Applications per post compared with post available, obviously not controlling for multiple apps. Very quick plots, but very deeply concerning. So he's showing that essentially there's just not enough posts for the number of people applying, just nowhere near, right? And it's getting worse year on year. So it feels like the bottleneck is there, not being communicated to anyone going into maybe junior doctors who are in medicine, not getting communicated to that. There is a significant bottleneck with getting it further along in your training. It's not going to make you very happy, is it?
No, I think the thing is that in response to that, there were lots of anger, understandably, because there's just a lot lack of training posts also then beget or is linked to lack of consultant posts, and then obviously the theories, isn't it, as to that's as we've said so many times before, was they want to keep people in the kind of more junior doctor role and stuff, and there's understandable frustration. The thing is that it's funny because I don't. How do you tell people that? It's so weird, isn't it? But then it's always been that terrible, hasn't it? I remember when I was applying for like cardiology numbers, people would be like, "Oh, it's 10 to 1," but it used to be
Mm,
30 to 1, and now
mm,
they're like, "Oh, it's 8 to 1." Like, those are all still terrible numbers. Like that means, and so, what are
mm.
you really supposed to do? Like, just
Yeah,
say
it's
it's
I agree
terrible
with you,
everywhere.
man. It's tough. Even now, people say, "Oh, I want to apply to radiology," but I heard it's really competitive. But I always feel like everything was competitive, wasn't it? Like getting into medical school was competitive, but you did that. So why is competition stopping you now? Like, throw your hat in and then just try your best. But again, on the other hand,
Yeah,
that's why people do multiple applications. That if something doesn't work out, they've still got something else to go back on, to fall back on. And when you see that, the odds don't look particularly great. And it's not that you don't have anywhere to go, as in, it's not as though if you don't get what you want, you've got something somewhere else to go. It's as if, like, even your backups are going to be competitive too. So then, there is a possibility where nothing comes back, and then you're just going to be stuck in the wilderness of trying to do something else for the time being. Maybe trying to get that teaching fellow job off that off that nurse that you're so unhappy with or something. I mean, it could be any of those things. But I think there was another follow up to, and again, Ollie Burton being mentioned twice today. I think because West Streeting, we've mentioned a few times, goes, NHS backs Labour's plan to double medical school places. Why doesn't the government? And that's such a superficial way of looking at things because, again, Ollie says, look, until this line stops getting shared, we have to intervene every time. Training more doctors means nothing if you don't fund more postgraduate training posts for them to go into. And that's true. So this whole thing is far more complicated. Someone like West just sees doctors. He doesn't see grades of doctors. He doesn't see consultants versus juniors. He just sees doctors. So if there's a problem with doctors, they just make more doctors. What's the issue here? But then the problem is like someone like this person doesn't realize that there's a very complex thing here because unfortunately you don't need lots of all doctors. There are certain doctors that you certainly do need a lot more of than you need of others. So things that are going to be in demand right now are probably going to be something like GP. I'd expect A&E,
yeah,
like acute medicine. That's going to be in demand. I would have expected. Whether there's training posts or not is another question. But I'm just saying they
yeah.
clearly need more people to do those jobs because those places are getting so busy right now.
Isn't that the crazy thing though? Because like we know that we do need there are gaps in AA, the gaps in
Mm,
GP, but there aren't lots of. It's not like there's an abundance of posts. Certainly in A&E, I don't know what it's like trying to get
mm,
GP training numbers, but I don't think there's an abundance of them. Isn't it quite
mm.
difficult?
Yeah, exactly. So even the people who want to do it aren't. I think that's the problem, right? The people who want to do it can't do it, and
Yeah,
I reckon if you did train every single person that wants to do it, you probably still wouldn't get the numbers out that you need to be able to get the job done. I know that's the case for radiology anyway. That even
mm,
if you took in every single person that wanted to do it, you still wouldn't have enough people to cover the work in general, let alone the job vacancies that are emerging. But speaking of training, there was a tweet that I put in for a change. because I've been pretty terrible at putting in tweets of late. But it said, if the private sector starts offering Caesar programs, the NHS is totally and utterly effed. What are your thoughts on that, Thrush? Is this true? Do you think if the private sector offered Caesar, and for those of you that don't know Caesar, it's an alternative pathway to CCT, i.e. finish training?
Yeah, I think it just throws it out there, doesn't it? It puts the cat amongst the pigeons. Basically, it's they say, don't they, that kind of as doctors we're beholden to the NHS for our training, right? We need to get there, and so this basically just suddenly opens up competition. So far, the only option if you wanted to leave the NHS and continue your training or continue training, then you'd have to leave the country for a different kind of training scheme. Or there is a separate training scheme for pharmaceuticals, so you can do that privately. There are lots of private hospitals, and if they could offer accessible ways of achieving your competencies and finishing your training that way, it suddenly gets a lot more competitive, doesn't it? Like locum pay. Think about doing locums, and just think about pay, for example, or just the kind of the environment in which things are different in private hospitals than they are in the NHS. It's really interesting. I'm not altogether against it. Are you?
No, not at all. I think part of the problem for the medical profession in general is that we've got a monopoly employer. I remember when I was very unhappy with my training and being treated the way I was being treated. There wasn't as though I could just suddenly step up and leave. So like, forget this. I'm going, right? I'm not going to take whatever you just said to me. You had to stick around, and if you want to leave, at the time anyway, I did see other people do this, which I'll tell you a quick story about that. But when I know other people did manage to get out, but you'd have to do an application, you'd have to do something and give some circumstantial reason as to why you need to leave. Then your TPD's got to allow it to go through. I'll tell you a story which may or may not have happened, but I remember I was at an MDT, and there was another trainee with me at this MDT, right? And the MDT went fine. There was no issues. And after the MDT, we all went for coffee with the consultant, sat around. And then I went to my morning CT urgent session. And then I got a phone call from another consultant, and I picked up the phone, and he was like, Imran, where are you right now? I said, I'm in the urgent CT. He goes, can you step out, please? And I thought, oh, great. What have I done now? So I walked out, and he goes, can you get out the department? So I was all right, fine. So I got out. He goes, say, anyone near you? I was like, no one's near me right now. I'm just outside. He goes, okay, fine. What happened in the MDT this morning? I was like, nothing. I just turned up. I did the MDT. And he goes, did anyone talk to this other trainee during the entire thing? I was like, no, man. That guy was quiet in the corner. He didn't say anything. And he goes, did anyone say anything to him? I was like, no. He goes, did he talk to anyone? I was like, no, not really. He goes, okay, fine. And then I couldn't help myself. And I said, look, everything okay? And he goes, yeah, this guy said that he's been bullied this morning by one of the other consultants. And I think I know what he's up to. I think he wants to basically pull a bullying card and then try and get himself transferred to somewhere else. And that's exactly what happened. That's exactly what happened. Yeah. So there are ways to do it, evidently, apparently, allegedly, but that's the extreme that one may think about going to if they want to just move. But in the private sector, you could just quit and say, I'm going somewhere else. In radiology, anyway, I could definitely see this working. Definitely, 100%. Because there's so much work coming in. If you are able to report the scans, get them checked by someone, get feedback, and get training, which some teleradiology companies do, such as a company called TMC, where they actually have online fellowships where you can report scans and have someone go through the scans with you and stuff. And then you're supposedly qualified to report their scans moving forwards. Then there's no reason that you can't. I don't think there's no reason that you can't train diagnostic radiologists in the private sector from a teleradiology company. Whether they want to take that up or not is a different question altogether. But yeah, I think that would be quite liberating for some people, actually, to be able to just pick and choose what works for them. But it wouldn't be great for the NHS. It can't be, because so many people are essentially stuck in potentially unhappy places because they're in training, quotation mark, right?
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, anyway, fair enough. You never seen that kind of game be played, like these kind of things, or is that as cardiology?
Mate,
happy to.
No, not that. Actually, not that. To transfer, I haven't seen anyone play. Or at least if someone was playing that game, it would have gone just whoosh over my head. I wouldn't have noticed. I was like whatever. But I remember once, like, there was a trainee who. This is really unprofessional, actually, because I remember the GP trainer telling me that his previous trainee had complained that he was racist, and then so this guy's a white guy, and he's telling me, and he goes, but I can't be racist. And then he waves at my face. And I remember being like, because you're not, even though that thing that you've just done to my face is probably not a great example of how you're not racist. But yeah, I was just like, okay.
Wow.
It
So
was,
I'm not racist because of you.
yeah, exactly,
Why
because we're
me?
together.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. And then he, by virtue of doing, was being a bit racist, I suppose.
Yeah,
So
could you
yeah, I
imagine?
wish him well. I wish him well. I hope he doesn't get gout or something.
Wish you well on your endeavors. Yes, thank you very
Yeah,
much.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah,
Anyway.
talking about someone that clearly can't look back and maybe see themselves for what they are. Again, someone called, actually, I won't even say their name, but they mentioned that they actually wrote into a paper or something saying junior doctors complain that their threatened strike is all about money and that the average earnings at 36,947 a year are too low. How well are junior doctors paid? Question mark. News, February 2022. It is perhaps salutary to recall that my first post as a house surgeon at Bart's in 1964 paid me £330 a year for a 7-day duty week when I ultimately rose to the giddy height of a registrar. I was rich, £1,200 a year. I know about inflation, but still, basically, you lot need to calm down. Yeah, I've got so much to say about this. I don't even know where to
Yeah.
start. Just okay. Do you want to rush? Should I? I'll
Yeah,
let you go for
me,
it.
no, it's just the thing is that I can imagine this kind of old fart coming out with this. And essentially, there's no good can come of trying to engage with someone as pig-headed as this. It's just so
Mm,
stupid because they don't, they're like, I know inflation, but they obviously don't, because they don't get that.
mm.
But also, like, where do you even start? Like, okay, so back then, treatment for an MI was what, bed rest, and you had to remember 3 drugs. Did you
Yeah.
ever have to fill in a VT? The job was very different. It was like the registrars and stuff were doing the operations and stuff. The consultants would be on the golf course. Like it was run in a very different way. There wasn't any litigation. Your money went could stretch a far longer way. Like people would pay their housing deposits with a credit card. You didn't even have to worry about that because you were staying in fully subsidized accommodation. So therefore, like your wage was just going into your bank account. Even your meals were subsidized. It's just they had it. They had the best NHS pension ever. They had so many, and if you compared their wage to like the average person's wage back then, it was astronomical. But if they
Mm.
can't, if that person is so blinded to seeing all of those things, then you better just disregard it because they're just an idiot.
I agree. But I think there's one or two things I wanted to pick up on, which is the wider issues and maybe with society in general. The way they talk about junior doctors and when they all, and I know this will happen again. So if any junior doctor of any position that is fighting this fight listen to me, I don't know why you would. But anyway, they're going to try and convince you that you're getting paid a lot. They're going to say to you that £36,947 is a lot. And I think as time's gone on, like when we were younger, when I was younger, I remember I was watching The Apprentice, right?
Yeah.
And then they were like, "Oh, whoever gets this job with Alan Sugar is going to have a six-figure salary." And at the time, I thought, "Oh, a six-figure salary, man, that's immense. Can you imagine a six-figure salary?" And then, but in my head, I was so young at the time, I didn't really calculate in my head like what six-figure actually means. To me, I thought it was 1,000,000, like a million. So I thought
Is that
that's amazing, man.
is that not what it
But
is?
then, no, six-figure that's 100,000.
Okay.
Yeah. So then,
No,
so
I
then,
didn't know.
yeah,
I don't
because
know.
that's a six-figure salary, 1,000,000. So then, as time went on, I realized, actually, hang on, they're not talking about £1 million salary with Alan Sugar. They're talking about a six-figure salary, which is actually £100,000. So all they've got to do is give a £100,000 salary to someone. But then I thought, yeah, £100,000 is a lot of money. Of course it
Yeah.
is, right? And when you look at the general population, of course it's like what, top 5%. But then you could either fight for your right to fight to work with Alan Sugar, or go to medical school, do a 3-year degree, do your 2 years of junior, do 3 years of being a GP trainee, then hopefully go into a partnership and then get a six-figure salary. So actually, that six-figure salary dizzy height didn't actually seem so dizzy anymore because you realize that it's actually quite an attainable thing if you do most sort of quite professional things. But then when you look at people, and you may not think this is true or not, but people who are on six-figure salaries aren't exactly living the high life that I thought it was when they were trying to promote it on like Alan Sugar. So then when they show you to, oh, junior doctors are making 36,947, they're trying to tell you that's a lot of money and you should be proud, you should be happy. But I think we all know that junior doctors are struggling, right? They're not that with all the living costs that you've mentioned, the food, the rent, student loan repayments and stuff.
Exams.
36,000 is and exams and your professional stuff. It doesn't really get you all that far. And then if you've got a family on top of it and you've got kids to feed or whatever is going on, right? That doesn't go all that much. So they're going to try and convince you that you're getting paid a good wage. but it's not really. It can't be because after all that work, after all that stuff, and the kind of importance of the work that you do, then you're finding yourself still struggling. Then this is not good enough, and this is something to fight for. This is
Yeah.
100% something to fight for, all the way to the very, very end. And it should not be said for anything less than six figures for all junior doctors. Don't you right?
It's,
Don't you think, Thrusha?
yeah, I think the thing is that at this kind of time, you'll get as you say, like these people, these kind of opinions. You're going to see more and more of them, and they're fringe opinions, and they say stuff because they know that they'll get in the paper, and then they'll once their column's been read and stuff, they'll just disappear back to irrelevant. And unfortunately, I think we are seeing, like, obviously now the strike dates have been announced, haven't they? So 13th, 14th, 15th of March. Preceding nights then, like I there were, as soon as they were released, I felt a bit nervous because, oh no, I'm like, oh, nice. And then I saw one of the consultants had like tweeted saying, oh, they're in full support and stuff. And I think even though a lot of people are doing it, I don't think that it can be done enough. I think it's great to see it because we do still feel uncomfortable about it. I feel a bit nervous. Like, I do feel it does make you. It's a weird thing to consider, isn't it? Like, striking, but at the same time, it's obviously very necessary, and I don't think there's any other real option. I feel like it's been forced.
100% it's been forced, and 100% there is no other option because you have to look at it in order for you to look after other people. You've got to be able to look after yourself. But if you're doing 13, 14-hour shifts or even longer than that, plus your publications, plus your things, and you're coming back and you can't even eat, right? Or you can't even have a stressor. You've got so many stressors at work, and you've got to stress about this too. Surely, as a society, we should be valuing the contribution that the medical profession has. The people that are saving lives, keeping people alive, are worth their weight in gold, right? They should not be worrying about anything else but saving lives. And in order for them to do that, they've got to be not worried about certain things. Like, let's go to footballers. Like footballers who go into the Premiership, right? And then they play for Manchester United. When they leave, they don't even know where you're meant to be cleaning your car. They don't know what to do. It's, who cleans the car? Because when they try to turn up to the place, someone in that car cleans the car for them, looks after everything for them. Why? Because Manchester United and every club knows that they want that footballer to worry about nothing else but kicking that ball through that net. They don't want to worry about bills. They don't want to worry about anything, not even cleaning their car. So that shows you at that level, like, how much they value the people that work for them, that they're going to get out of them, that they are saying that, look, don't worry about anything else. Everything is covered. We need you to just concentrate on what you're doing. And for me personally, Thrusha, if you're going to be doing something to my heart, I'd rather that you come to my little Bentley, very well rested, having a wonderful life, coming in and then save my life, not worrying about anything else, not thinking, I need to run off and do this and run off and do that. No worries, mate. Look after my heart, please. And then we'll carry on with life.
You make a very compelling argument.
As usual.
Yeah.
They should get me to argue. So,
absolutely.
Like, I've got something to talk to come to the negotiations. They're like, all right, here we go.
Yeah. You had me
I'm going to tell you exactly how it is.
So there's a thread that I thought we should like bring up that I guess that I've been like, as soon as I saw it, I was like, this is going to be a good one to talk about, which is so it goes flex the lowest academic lowest score, because I think I beat you on this. To remind us that everyone fails at some point. So I got 8% in a French exam. It was in like third year. I still remember.
You haven't beaten me. You haven't.
Have you ever got 0?
Yes.
Have you? What?
Yes.
In what?
Yeah. Mr. Rose music.
Music. I'd have been like, what?
Yeah, no, that's what I thought. Let's say what. But he actually made a really big deal out of it because there was one person that did the worst I've ever seen. And then he looked at me and goes, it was you, Imran. Do you know what score you got? And I was like, I don't know.
In front of the class?
Yeah. And he went lower. And 40, he went lower. Lower. 20, 10, he went lower. And he just went on. And then I went, did I get 0? He goes, you got 0. You got 0. I was like, wow.
God. So at least, mine was a miss.
Honestly, that's amazing. Saying, like, if there's anything that could be failed. So if you looked at, let's say you looked at a medical person's career, and then you looked at all the exams they've got to sit, and you think to yourself, like, okay, how many of those exams could someone fail, and how many times could they fail and still make it to the end? That's me. That is me. Genuinely, think about it. Like, every single freaking exam that I sat in, especially medical school onwards, was flunk after flunk until the point that... Do you remember the elective? Do you not remember? The elective, they said I wouldn't be able to go on elective unless... So basically, fourth year, so I failed every single exam right up to fourth year. I managed to get through just about, getting the scrape through the marks. And I think fourth year, we had 3 modules. I think one was like obs and gynae, one was psych, and I can't remember what the other one was. And I go ahead and flunk the first exams. And then I get called in and they said, listen, you're going to have to, you might be able to, because you're so close to passing, you might be able to get a compensatory fail as long as you pass the next two exams. And if you don't, then you can't go on an elective. And
How
I
do I
don't
not
remember, I
remember
remember
this?
talking. Yeah, so then I had to, I put my head down, head down, and I compensatory failed the next exam. And then finally I was on psych, and somehow, I don't know how, but I managed to get just beyond the pass mark. And so that the overall meant that my pass marks are high enough for me to be able to go on elective in the first
Oh
place with
wow.
you, which is how part of this, the whole
Thing.
podcast has begun.
Yeah.
But yeah, genuinely, I would be surprised if anyone has failed as many times as I did and still made it through. Genuinely.
I think there's an inspiring story in there.
Yeah, not because I wanted it to be. I didn't go out to fail. I worked
Yeah,
quite
but
hard,
that's
thank
look.
you.
Yeah, exactly. Look at where you are now and all that.
Alive, that's the main thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. You're alive. So,
But then...
should we talk about something else, which is also probably equally no, it's much bleaker. But there are a few interesting perspectives on it. So again, this is another one from Dr. Rosie Brewer. Loads of
Why is
people
she coming up again on our pod? Thrusha, you're just trawling through these things and finding Rosie and just
Yeah,
quoting
pretty much.
everything.
Yeah,
Okay,
exactly.
fine,
It's just me hitting on Rosie.
fine.
So she. Oh wait, I don't have the time subscription.
Got flustered by the display picture. Okay, should we move on?
So basically, she linked this article from an ICU consultant. And the issue, did you get a chance to read it? It was quite good.
Remind me which one. I did look at all.
It goes, ICU cons feels vulnerable. And it basically talked about the amount of uncertainty that they had. They were seen as the kind of decision makers and stuff, because obviously the sickest people with COVID would be going to ITU, and like how difficult it was. Time. Sorry, such an exhausting time.
Sorry to bore you through, yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. So it was such an exhausting time, and it was just really interesting. But at the end, basically, you could see there's an advert for their book, and then I saw that there's some reactions to it, and I was a bit like, oh, can I be bothered to engage my brain and work out whether I should be annoyed by this or not? And people are basically saying that, again, they were flaunting their misery and stuff for likes, and whether that was ethical. What do you...
I think I did try and click on this link.
Yeah,
the Times link, yeah.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't take me anywhere, and all it takes me to is the Times, and the entire page is advertised by Waitrose. Did you see this? The top, the sides. I'm going to even share my screen because I've never seen a screen like this before. So I'm going to show this to you. There you go, Thrusha. I'm sharing my screen to Thrusha. Can you see this? That's what that page looks like to me.
It's crazy, isn't it?
It literally
it's
is.
So
banner ads, yeah. Yeah, it's not. But the thing is, like, there's banner ads, and then there's banner ads, and we're talking top, sides, and let's see if the bottom as well is literally completely engulfed in Waitrose adverts. And obviously, Waitrose adverts. Waitrose have thought to themselves, probably the best people to advertise to are people who read the Times. So, yeah. So when I clicked on it, I was like, yeah, I'm not taking that. So I didn't really get to read that properly. Yeah.
Fair enough. What do you think about kind of fiction? It's not fiction, is it? Non-fictional accounts of working as a doctor and talking about, because this person, I remember in the article that they had like an inspiring patient who they obviously anonymize, but they kind of call upon them. Oh my God, sorry, I'm so sorry. They call upon them and they talk about them quite a lot as this kind of inspiring person. And I think people objected to that. Do you think that's...
Yeah, isn't that the same kind of situation you have with that
Rachel Clark?
Yeah. As in, from what I understand, I have got no issues with Rachel Clark, by the way.
No.
That I think a lot of people have issues with the fact that they're writing a lot about experiences, and sometimes talking about experiences that they may or may not have that much insight into. From what I understand, I've never read any of the things really, so I wouldn't really know. But in the same with Adam Kay, isn't it? Like he's pretty much made a career off the back of his experiences, whether they're true or untrue. I don't really have too much of an issue with it, really. If people are interested in what you're going to talk about, and I guess with any kind of almost dinner or lunch conversation you may have with someone, your experiences that you draw on, maybe from work, and shape you. So personally, I don't have an issue at all. I know people will always question, you know what, can I just say something? I do wonder about medical people in general sometimes, in terms of, I feel like there are unwritten rules that and then when people go outside those unwritten rules, they start, I don't know, people just look at them funny, or they'll say they'll be a bit funny about it. So let's say, for example, Thrush and I decide that we're gym bros, man. Why don't we do our own workout program? Immediately, there'll be a whole load of people like a bunch of grifters. Why don't we just like working out? Well, so what's the issue there? Or let's say I'm really interested in getting people's wrinkles, getting rid of people. I genuinely am interested in trying to do cosmetic surgery, but I don't really want to do the plastic surgery thing, and do a bit of Botox here and there to supplement my income, which is easier than doing night shifts and weekends. But then a whole load of, it seems to me as a med Twitter doesn't, or a lot of medical people don't really like that. And they're quite negative about people who do other things with or without their medical backing.
Mm.
And so even to the point that when someone does any sort of journalism or writing a story about being a doctor or experience of being a doctor, people can be quite negative about them. But I
Yeah.
don't get that. Why? What do you want us to do? Just sit there and do nothing else and just be a doctor and nothing else? In case, even if you've got other interests and other things you want to do and other things
I
you want
think
to
so,
follow.
isn't it? It doesn't it play into. Do you reckon that's just like a UK doctor thing? Because I think in the US, or at least from what I see on Twitter, they didn't seem to have any real problem with self-promotion. Whereas here, you're supposed to be like this kind of tortured soul, aren't you? Who just does it all for the patient. And I don't think it's always been that way. Obviously, I remember reading this book where they were saying that when the NHS was being incepted, the BMA were really against doctors being part of it because they were like, no, relinquishing control and stuff, and we'll be like civil servants. But it's just, and then this whole thing about duty and stuff seems to have really gotten away from itself since then.
Yeah, yeah. And then so sometimes I just do wonder, yeah, let's say Therusha and I decide to do something else like, outside of the whole medical thing. Would we be looked at negatively
Let's do
because
it,
we
man.
did something that was outside? Of course, if you want to do a workout program, let's do it.
Let's do it.
But it just seems to be as though if anyone does anything that's not just being on the wards and seeing patients and doing management roles and teaching roles, if it doesn't fit within that remit or what we think is acceptable, you're going to be labeled as a grifter or something, even though you may have genuine interest in other things. So what? Okay. This is why I half jokingly say I don't hate on people's hustles. You do what you got to do. If it pays your bills, even better. You go for it. Do whatever you got to do. It's not a non-issue, and you shouldn't think about what other people think and feel because otherwise you can be stuck being unhappy. Yeah.
True.
Sorry. Anyway, going off topic slightly again.
Should do the names
Should
one.
we? Yeah, go on then. Go for it. Yeah, I think this
So-
comes up a fair bit, doesn't it? But
It
yeah, I think it's
does.
come up twice in two different ways this week. Yeah. So do you want to do one? I'll do the other.
Yeah, sure. This one is a tweet by @Gillybean. Gilly's with a G, or Gillybean 712. The novice anaesthetist I was working with today introduced himself to the patient as Dr. X, and then introduced me to the patient as Gillian. Smart, weird face. Lovely.
Bethan had similar in clinic, the new rotation. I introduced myself to the consultant as Bethan, one of the new GPST doctors. He proceeded to ask me for a shortened version of my name. Okay, fine. And for the rest of the clinic, he then introduced himself as Mr. X, the consultant, and that's Beth, my helper.
So lame.
Wow. Yeah. What is that? What is that?
I don't know.
Why are people doing that?
I think it's definitely like a kind of. Can you imagine like being the type of person who needs to make themselves feel big by making other people small? That's essentially what it is, isn't it?
Thrusha, maybe you can tell me about this, yeah, because I remember like when I was in one of the places I was training, which I absolutely hated these, and then I moved to somewhere and the consultant was talking to me, and then another doctor came in to ask for a referral, and then it was something so minor. She said, "Oh, let me just see what my colleague thinks," and I looked around thinking, "Who are you talking about?" And then she goes, "Imran, what do you think?"
Yeah, nice.
And I thought, colleague. Yeah, I felt like Dobby the dwarf, the house elf. I was like, Master, what? You call me what? Because she gave me the little sock. And I think I even came back to Rabia and I said, I've never been called I don't remember the last time I was called a colleague. Like I've always been called the junior, what my reg thinks. But those little things do mean a lot to people.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then calling someone doctor, it means a lot to people, and if they want to be called that.
Absolutely.
And I've only recently taken this up for now. I think maybe through our conversations that I should ask people, how would you like me to introduce you?
That's good.
To the next patient, because that's been important. Because obviously now I understand that even inadvertently getting it wrong, thinking you try and do the right thing is important. As in, it's easier just to ask people. Just easy to ask people, how would you like me to introduce you, and then leave it at that, isn't it?
I quite like doing it. I quite like it, introducing like kind of junior colleagues and saying, "Oh, like I'm Therusha, I'm the cardiologist, and this is one of the other cardiologists." I just introduce them as other cardiologists and just figure out the same title. But I just don't see why it's so difficult and why people feel like they need to like, because that person's gone out of their way, haven't they, to be like, "No, I want to make your name so smaller," and then it just is so transparent.
Yeah, call you a helper, what? Like a little Santa's helper?
Yeah, exactly. Literally like a Dobby thing. It's so weird.
Yeah, exactly. Don't give him a sock, others going to run away. Yeah. Yeah, fine. Should we go on to some festivals? Or is there
let's do it. Let's do it.
Yeah, do some festivals. Like I haven't looked at these festivals, so
okay. Do you want to do one? You pick one.
Okay, I'm going to go for this one then.
Okay,
so they're both as equally as horrendous.
They're actually, I think they're okay this week.
Okay. My 17-year-old daughter put clothes she's worn once, sometimes only for a few hours, in the wash, creating an endless pile of washing. I've been taking it out, folding it up, and giving it back a day later without it ever seeing the inside of a washing machine.
Fair enough.
Interesting.
This is like your energy, because I feel like it'd be like a kind of saving money thing, but also a bit mischievous.
No, I think genuinely I did notice that we're having a lot of washing turning up. So I did actually mention recently that with the kids anyway, do we really need to be washing their jeans every single time they wear it?
Yeah.
Because you get messy anyway. I don't really wash my jeans every single time. So I think we've reduced that. But yeah, no, that is, yeah.
It's funny actually, isn't it? The kind of gradual kind of transformation into our dads where you're kind of like turning switches off. Oh, gotta save the electricity.
Literally did that today. Like,
did you?
Why the lights switched on? Yeah, why are you doing
it? It's my money. And then you're like, and then when Lowe's is like, I'm cold, I'm like, Lily, you're wearing one layer. And then I'm like, oh my God, I'm my dad. I'm my dad. I'm my dad. Oh my God. So stuff like that. It's just, I don't know. It's just funny, isn't it, to see the descent. Basically, my one is I used to send Christmas cards pretending to be and from neighbors who I knew hated each other, would put really over the top messages in them, inviting them over for drinks and saying they wanted to be friends. Never found out what happened. Oh, that's chaotic. I like that one.
Word. That is such a, why would you manipulate such an awkward, it's making me cringe on the inside, don't you think? Just making you feel like, no, definitely not. Anyway. It's like have you ever been in that situation where you got like some family come over and those two family members just don't get along? They absolutely hate each other, haven't spoken to each other in years, and you just know that there is a potential another argument could turn up. Let's just hope it doesn't. And you just the whole evening you spend stressed out. Like, please don't talk to each other. Please don't talk to each other. And then you just get away with them. Hopefully, most of the time. But why would you like invite that situation? Like
it's amazing,
when that
isn't
happens
it?
To me, it's unavoidable. It's like a wedding or something's happened.
Like Jo was telling me that when she was dropping Erin she was taking Erin to this kind of music class thing, and she gets there, she's a bit early, and she'd just finished and she was going back to the car, and so she'd parked from Jo's account, and I believe her, like perfectly in the center of the space, but there's a person in the space next to her who's like really far over. So Jo couldn't get to the baby seat side to get Erin in. She tried, and basically she was doing this thing where she opens the door to Erin's side. So she initially tries to go around from the other side to get Erin into the seat, and she's it's just because the backward facing, it's really difficult to do. So she tries that, she can't. And then she realizes that the person who parked there is sat in the car watching the entire time. Anyway, so then Jo goes back around and tries to open the door that's nearest the car, and she basically puts her hand in the way so that the door doesn't touch the door of this car. Struggles to get Erin into the seat, finally gets him into the seat. Erin's obviously now kicking off because we tried to hit me in the other side or whatever. What the hell? Anyway, he finally gets him in. And then as Jo's about to drive off, this woman then goes through this whole like song and dance of kind of getting out of the car and like looking at the side of her car to check for like scratches and stuff. And Jo's just telling me the story, and I could feel in my chest, like I'm just getting more and more like righteous, indignant rage. Like, why the hell would you sit there and watch someone struggle with that? And it's the same energy. It's the same energy. Like you just want to create some drama in other people's lives, mainly perhaps because you're a little bit miserable yourself, and so you just have to make stuff harder for other people and be like, let's now watch. And same energy.
It's horrible, isn't it? Okay, cool.
It just went off on that. Sorry.
We'll finish on that. That's a good Thank you, Thrusha.
Thanks, thanks for listening, everyone.
All right, cool.
All right.
So anyway, look, junior doctors, go for it, man. Do not give in, fight all the way, man. And I want all you guys to have Bentleys and big mansions so that you can look after us better. Do it.
Yeah.
Do
See
it.
on the
Make
picket.
it happen.
See you on the picket.
Yeah. Well,
bye, guys.
Am I allowed to be there? Or do people just say, look,
you should. If you don't, then maybe you can make us coffees using that expensive coffee machine of yours.
What expensive coffee machine, Thrusha? I don't know about that.
Bean to cup.
Right.
Sorry.
Let's just stop now. Okay,
all right,
bye.
Cool. Bye.